I'm on the phone with Dr. Reid Wilson talking about his new book, Stopping the Noise in Your Head, The New Way to Overcome Anxiety and Worry. And by the way, welcome to the show, Doctor. This is the 160th birthday of Sigmund Freud, father of psychoanalysts, right?
Oh, yes, we were childhood friends.
Well, you had so many years of experience in this. You are an international expert in the treatment of anxiety disorders, and your credits are would take over 5 minutes to list. So let's just move forward with this interview, because I'm sure there's a lot of people interested to learn about anxiety disorders, because this isn't something new, and a lot of people are starting to say, hey, I just had a panic attack. Let's start with panic attacks. What are they?
A panic attack is a sudden rush of, and this is the distinction, sudden rush of anxiety that really freak you out, and what we call thoughts of impending doom. I'm going to die, or I'm going to have a heart attack, or I'm going to faint or humiliate myself. So, their heart's racing, my head gets dizzy, my hands are shaking, all of these symptoms that come out of the clear blue, that's really how it begins. It comes out of the clear blue. But after a while, people start noticing where these come from, and closed-in spaces, any place where they feel trapped, and then very often people with panic disorders start developing phobias because they just learn to step away from any place that might trigger these panic attacks because they don't know how to control them.
So then you start to avoid any situation that's causing the panic attack.
Right, and that makes perfectly good sense. Why would I go into the grocery store if once I get in there, I lose control of my body and feel awful, and the rest of the day I feel terrible, and it makes sense to me. If that was going on to me, I would also withdraw.
Yes, so your mind starts to take over and say, this is danger, when obviously it's not dangerous to be in a grocery store or an elevator, for example, or next to a spider. It's not really impending danger, but people associate then, after a panic attack, they associate the incident that took place when they had the panic attack. They associate it then, and this is what it's like a continual circle of panic attacks after that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And the interesting thing is the body is reacting impeccably to a false message from the mind, right? But even the mind is giving some positive messages. If I've been traumatized by having the horrible symptoms on the elevator, then of course the mind's going to say, why in the world would I go through that? So we're not really having to challenge the much as we need to challenge our thinking at the time when these symptoms start to show up.
Okay, and that's a hard thing to do, because I read your book, and may have problems with this. The amygdala. Amygdala, the two almond shapes in your brain, actually is our primitive protector. For dinosaurs would chase us, and we would run, and we'd get the adrenaline rush, and and we would not even notice any of these symptoms because there was a real threat. And the problem is, when a threat occurs, it happens so quickly that our conscious thought process isn't aware of it, and it goes straight to that area of our brain, doesn't it?
That's exactly right. And so often things you won't even know it's happening. If you're, have had trouble on a plane before, you can be walking down the street, hear a plane fly overhead, your amygdala picks it up from your thalamus and starts reacting. You don't even realize that's the trigger, but the amygdala is responding because that hears that sound that goes, 2 weeks from now you got to get on a plane. This is scary, and all of a sudden there it is again. So it does happen. It certainly can circumvent what we would call the prefrontal cortex and go right into the system of the body that causes all this fight or flight reaction.
Now, why does the panic attack start in the first place? Since there is no real danger, is it stress? Is it trauma? Is is it a variety of different things? Is there anything?
Well, that's a long story, but there can be, for the first panic attack, about 6 to 8 months of stress for a number of people, not everyone. And the stress tends to deal with loss, long-term illness, someone moves away, you get a divorce, you get pregnant, and so forth. But there's this lag period from that experience of stress and the first panic attack, so people don't make that connection. And obviously, if I were about to get up to give a speech and I suddenly discovered that I had left my PowerPoint slides at home and I have 120 PowerPoint slides driven, there are circumstances that can also throw us into a panic. It's not that different from driving down the road and hitting a patch of black ice and feeling the car start to slide sideways. There's this sudden, that sudden thought of an impending doom, and now we're in a mess at that moment. It's much more difficult to perform when I've got these thoughts coming up in my head. We're talking about this noise that comes up in my head, like hope nothing goes wrong, hope they like me, hope I don't mess up this speech, and so forth. So we're trying to clear out some of those things. The body's going to take care of itself. It really works to your betterment. But if we keep triggering these symptoms, then of course we're stuck.
Now, why would we want to keep triggering these symptoms? Is it because we've now have something learned in our brain that says this is a danger? Each time we give a speech, we may forget our PowerPoint, or
well, in essence, yes, we perceive the event. This is like performance anxiety. In most of these circumstances, whether it's a speech or not, we perceive the event that's approaching to be catastrophic. We have a huge task, and we perceive our skills to be low. So when we got that mismatch, I don't have what it takes to manage this event, and the event is so important and so huge, then now either I'm going to approach it and feel very anxious, or I'm going to just cancel it. I'm not going to fly on a plane anymore. It's too much. I take the stairs now, not an elevator. I don't go to parties because I get clumsy and awkward and I'll humiliate myself and be seen. I don't go into the convenience store and buy anything because the clerk may look at me and I might not say the right words, and she'll think I'm weird, and then my life is ruined. I mean, there is this exaggerated sense of how bad things are going to be if things go wrong, and we really need to be working on, I can tolerate mistakes, I can handle this. Of course, when we talk about panic attacks per se, you really do have to have the experience of managing a panic attack before you can start saying, I'll handle this. And so there's some training we got to do for ourselves to get ourselves to feel like, wait a minute, I don't like this, it's uncomfortable, but I'll get through it and I'll be okay. That's now we begin to get control. This whole crazy idea of I want to go toward what scares me. Why in the world would we want to do that? Because it's in the way of me getting something else that I would like. If I want to get to the wedding, if I want to use the frequent flyer miles of my partner and start traveling, then I want to face the threat of flying and have those feelings so I can learn to master them and get on the other side of it. So we really have to have something that motivates us to go toward things that scare us. Otherwise, we sit still.
So what we're trying to do then is retrain our primitive brain into realizing these are, well, you use in your book signal or noise, and the signal is, well, there's real danger or there's something to address, and the noise is just this repetitive thoughts that's saying, no, if I go there, that's danger. And what I got out of your book is you have to make that distinction, and you have to use a paradoxical approach to overcoming anxiety. And I think this is like in the book you say, hey, this is a little strange here, to actually confront anxiety with enjoying it Well, basically, first determining if it's a signal or a noise, and if it's just noise, you want to have some word like a mantra to say, "Hey, look I want my freedom back. Go back, stay in the moment, what you were doing," and those thoughts will keep coming up. And like in your book, it says it could happen in a few seconds. Those thoughts of worrying, the anxiety can come up, and then you once again address it, and then go about to what you're doing. And then eventually the brain will start to retrain itself and say, hey, enough is enough. Is that the basis of your book?
Well, retraining the primitive brain is about a quarter of this work. The 3/4 of it is to shift our attitude about it. Rethink, have a more aggressive approach. This is an aggressive sport. I have to be shifting what I'm saying. Like I was mentioned before, I want to step toward what's hard for me. I want to push past this. If it's uncomfortable, so be it. I'll handle this discomfort. I'm not going to get pushed around anymore. I'm done avoiding. I've got some skills here I'm going to try out. I can experiment and see how this goes. It's really, what will really drive the work is how I start reframing the nature of the problem and my ability to cope with it. That's the big work. We won't have to worry about the primitive brain if we can keep helping ourselves step forward. It will, as you're saying, pretty much do the work automatically as long as we can put it in the right circumstances. The way to get that amygdala to learn not to overreact is to put it in the threatening situation, the elevator, wherever it may be, and simply hang out. But people don't hang out. They keep going, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I hope the cable doesn't break. Oh, what if the elevator gets stopped? And now our prefrontal cortex, all that talking, overrides the ability of the amygdala to learn anything. We keep scaring ourselves, and that's what we need to change.
So can you retrain the amygdala then over by facing your fears in a approach that you say, hey, let me reframe my thoughts, not even calm this anxiety, welcome the anxiety, know that you can deal with anxiety, and you keep exposing yourself to it. Will the amygdala calm, or rather retrain itself and say, hey, this isn't a saber-toothed tiger coming at you. This is something just called noise.
Yeah, and you corrected yourself, and you're exactly right. You said relax or calm down, and no, don't calm down. Don't calm down, because that's what we would call arousal incongruence. Gosh, now I'm going to step into a difficult situation, and I'm requiring myself to relax. That's asking too much of ourselves. We want to do what I would call arousal congruent. I can be anxious like this and handle it. If I can give my talk and people see my face red or my hands shake, oh well. So now if we allow it, we permit it, that's how the amygdala learns. We get out of its way. So this crazy thing of saying, this is exactly what I want to experience now, that's nuts, but it stops us from saying, this is terrible, this is awful, I must get rid of it. This whole process of, this whole getting rid of orientation is what's crippling us. That's what we want to sweep out of the way.
Okay, so this is, but if a person has had this for 20 years, 25 years, is it possible that they can read your book and get help from it and overcome something or manage something that has been avoiding, interrupting their life for 25 years? Is that possible?
Well, my opinion,
okay.
Of course I wrote it, right?
Yes.
My opinion is if they read the book and absorb it, they can't help but get better. I'm not saying they will get best, because there's a lot of things that go on in people's life, but they can't help but get better because all of us instinctually think in the wrong way about these anxiety problems, and the book's going to help us change how we think about it. And that automatically will improve things. Now, whether they need to, take a medication or go into therapy and get a specialist to help them with it or so forth, that's what we have to find out. This is what we call step one of a step care process. It's inexpensive, easily accessible, it's not complicated, and a number of people will get help, and those who need more help at least will be oriented about what needs to happen in that further help.
Reading the book, it seems like it's all-encompassing because you laid it out. What I like about it is you, as a writer, by the way, are an excellent writer. You actually talk with the people throughout the book. You'll say, hey, wait a minute. It's kind of like you'll re-grip. Hey, grab your attention again on what I'm writing, what I'm saying, and you're talking to people right through the book, and I really enjoy that. I have a tough one for you, agoraphobia, and where people they make a safety zone, and they can stay in that safety zone for the rest of the house. Some people have been known just to stay in their home till they die. Is that something that they can learn to maybe get down to the grocery store, but that's as far as they will get because it's impossible to break that cycle of fear? Or is it possible to break the cycle of fear by what you teach in your book to keep going through? Let's say you're in Chicago and you want to go to Indiana. You're way out, you're 2 hours out of your safety zone. How are you going to handle the 2 hours of anxiety that it produces? And, well, obviously with your methods, but also will it calm down, and will you eventually overcome what is known as agoraphobia? Just will you focus just in one area?
You have a few questions within that question.
Yes.
Agoraphobia is really just extreme panic disorder. That's what it is, and it's that I have discovered that I don't know how to stop these panic attacks from occurring, and so I have to back up. I simply can't tolerate the feelings, and then I find my comfort zone, and people can the world can get away with you not leaving your house or not driving anywhere anymore. It's going to really limit you, but you yourself, even though you're comfortable, your life is really small.
Yes.
And you can start expanding your world by learning to it does take smaller steps. You really do have to figure out how to cope with the symptoms of a panic attack, and there's lots of things we do with that. I'll have people in my room and my office, and I'll spin them in a chair for 30 seconds and have them have some of the symptoms of panic and learn to cope with that, or breathe through a cocktail straw where they have difficulty breathing, or hyperventilate where they have all these symptoms of panic that they're so afraid of, and learn in a gradual way tolerating the symptoms themselves before they have to go get in the car and drive to Indiana or so forth. So we can separate out these symptoms that I'm afraid of without having to put them into the circumstance
that's even
afraid of.
So even agoraphobia, that's manageable.
It's manageable, but you have to be willing. You have to choose to go toward discomfort
and
go toward uncertainty. I don't know how this is going to turn out, and I'm going to go forward anyway, because really all the anxiety disorders spin around this idea of I've got to know how things are going to turn out. If we can understand that that's what we're up against, not all these symptoms, but I'm afraid of what may happen next, and I need to know what's going to happen next. That's why people stay in their homes or protect themselves, because it's known. And that's what we have to challenge. That's why it's aggressive. This is not, you can't play defense and win a game. You have to play offense.
And you score points, like you said in the book, and it's an excellent way you lay out an approach to manage, because you can't ever cure anxiety, because we need anxiety. That's what protects us from a speeding car heading our way or anything that's dangerous. But it's just, for some reason, in some people, that message gets mixed up, doesn't it? Because from your book, you don't really suffer from any anxiety disorders, but you've had anxiety in when you were rolling the boat, when you were in the Canadian Rockies, those areas. You had to say, like you were in the Canadian Rockies, say, "Hey, what do I do for a living?" Okay, and then you taught yourself.
Bill, you read the book.
I read the book. I could tell you, everybody that was involved. I was surprised. It's a easy read book, but the most important thing about it is you can't change the person. Nobody can. It's the person that has to be brave enough to stir up the courage to make the step forward. And these can be done in smaller increments, can't they?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what I say. I don't care. If I'm working with somebody, I don't care what kind of risk they take. I just want them to do something that generates some degree of uncertainty or some degree of distress about their theme. And you were very complimentary around my writing, and I appreciate that. But one of the advantages of writing this book is this stuff is so universal. Why can I write about it? Because I understand it. You understand it. We all know what this is like. It's just people, the disorders come in and move people to a degree that is much more uncomfortable than the rest of us.
Yeah, I read several books. I go far back as reading Dr. Claire Week's books. Where she
she
had the four basic principles.
Even small people can see miles on a giant's shoulders, and she was a giant.
Yes, and it was like her. I forget the four things she had, but it was float through it, acceptance, and let time pass. But yours, yours is actually just hits the head of the problem of saying you're gonna have to challenge this. Don't try to make yourself feel comfortable. Welcome it. Become friends with it, because it is part of you, and you can do cunning little things, like you say. You have your challenge of anxiety, but you have to decide to become the controller. You have to win the game over anxiety, and it's fooling yourself each time. And there are, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, I think it stands for.
That's good.
Okay, they've been around for a lot of years. Same with tranquilizers, Xanax, Valium, things like that. But those you refer in the book as crutches. They can help. And now I'm going maybe outside of the book, but as crutches, wouldn't that be something that could help a person move forward when they're stuck? Because you mentioned the word stuck too. When you get stuck, you need something to help push you through. Would you
Oh, well, sure. Crutches are used to help us heal ourselves. You wear a cast, and you walk on crutches in order to get your leg back in the right shape. Eventually, you need to be dropping those crutches when you can. But, if you're afraid to fly and you haven't flown in 6 years, and now your company's requiring you to fly overseas in 5 weeks, to get a prescription for a benzodiazepine to take on your flight, and if you can afford it, upgrade to first class. And, any crutch you can find will be fine, because that next step is a doozy. You're taking a large step forward. So anytime we're pushing into big new territory, then using a crutch is helpful. If you haven't been to church in 6 years because you've had panic attacks in church, you can sit on the back pew. You can sit right next to the exit. You can decide that you're going to leave before the sermon begins. These are all crutches. You're going to escape before the sermon starts, but that lets you go into church, and you can build from there. So you can be proud of what you've just accomplished. So I'm all in favor of crutches. Mm-hmm. What happens when we only continue to use the crutches is then we don't trust ourselves, and we're not finding a way to be self-reliant.
And those crutches wear out. They do. Just like if you kept walking around with a bad leg with crutches and you didn't need the crutches any longer, those things will wear down, because I know SSRIs, they have a lifespan, and people who take them, they like Prozac, that was a popular drug too at one time. They called it the Prozac poof. All of a sudden, well, we don't know why it's not working, but it hasn't. And the more research that I've done on this is that you can use your crutches, but don't make them the answer to your problem. Your book...
Right, and you know what the biggest crutch is that we use? Avoidance.
Avoidance, yes.
Just stop doing things. That's the biggest crutch.
Yeah, it's like when you're sitting down, I remember like your toilet was overflooding, and you had to shut that down. You must have had a 3.5-gallon tank there, I think, by the way, doctor. Okay.
Something like gremlins.
Yeah. But, it's very clear in the head. The imaging is very well the way you write, and that is when I read a book and I see the person's able to create an image in a person's head, then whatever it is, if it's a drama, a murder mystery, whatever, when you can create a picture, and even if it's factual, and then look later on 5 years and say, I read about this, like John Dillinger, and the jail was described, and then you look at a photo and say, that's exactly how I envisioned it. That is fantastic writing, and that's why I compliment you so much on this book. Now you're not a novice, and you don't have a panic disorder per se, but you get anxious. But you know about this because you've worked with some of the top leaders in there. I'm familiar with some of the names too that you've had listed in your book. And I didn't read your other book. I think it's called just Panic Attacks. Is that the correct?
Well, I have a book called Don't Panic, and I have a book called Stop Obsessing. So.
Stop Obsessing. And that's another thing, OCD. OCD, isn't that just another variation of anxiety disorder?
Well, in my opinion, it is. You may not know, but we have actually moved OCD out of the category of anxiety disorders, but I think it fits beautifully in the anxiety disorders, and all the stuff that I'm writing about here works in the same way with people with obsessions and compulsions.
Yeah, because I noticed the OCD, I would say I have some of that. And I would notice, if I don't get something put there perfectly, I have to touch it a few times to make it feel right. And you mentioned that feel right.
Bill.
And it say, oh, okay, wait a minute. What happens if I don't do it? Eventually you forget about it, and then you can build on saying, I don't have to do that any longer, and I don't do
it. That kind of that sudden urge to do the compulsion, all of a sudden you've just gone ahead and moved it again, and you never really find out if you can tolerate it.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to actually push that edge. It's like smoking cessation. I work with some people who are addicted to cigarettes. They say, well, I smoke because I like the taste. Oh yeah, ha ha ha. Let me take your cigarettes away for about 6 hours and see if you don't find the craving there. But the reason they don't notice the craving is because they compulsively grab the cigarette before they notice the craving consciously. Same thing with compulsions with OCD. We just automatically wash our hands again or automatically check the lock to make sure it's locked without really tolerating that doubt and distress that comes initially. But what you just said was, if I can let time pass, then I can discover, well, wait a minute, I actually didn't have to do that.
And that's where the reframing comes into play too. You have to reframe.
Yeah,
you have to focus.
And you have to kind of have you have to have faith.
Yes.
This work takes faith and trust because you can't know. These are disorders of uncertainty, which means you can't even know and trust that the approach is going to help you, and you got to do it anyway, risking that things will go wrong.
And that's where the courage comes into, and also the crutch, depending on how severe the person is. And I don't recall if you were using the name Bob, but the
Bob was him, yes.
Okay. Well, there's my memory. That's one of the problems I have. I have a good memory. Bob, who would just have to sit there with the channel changer constantly, and or his clothes, would look there.
Yeah.
He spent his day doing that. But when you, like you said, you create a wedge, you use the word wedge, when you can put the wedge in there, and that's the trick, is to be able to have something that you can wedge, because that's a very difficult thing to start to learn in the brain, because as you described, our thought process first goes to the amygdala, and I know I'm probably pronouncing I'm amygdala.
Accent on the second syllable.
Okay, that's something I've had since childhood, and I actually went to speech therapy, and I could not get that out of my head. But that is something that you have to be able to do, is create the wedge. And when you have your brain that wants to respond to that, it's very hard, because it's just not a basic, because it's not rational. That's, that's the word. Anxiety is not rational, and since it's not rational,
it feels rational. And you mentioned Bob, who's in the book, and the thing about Bob was he was motivated. He wanted something in his life, and you know what he wanted? He said, I got a lot of goals in my future I would like, but really, I just want my mind back. Yeah. I don't want to be plagued all day long with this. And that it's a simple thing, but I want my mind back. And that'll drive you to get the work done.
Oh yeah, it's freedom. That freedom to just be able to get up and say, I don't have to spend time doing any of these compulsions, or the freedom to say agoraphobia or whatever those disorders are. You don't have to spend time anymore. You spend your time on accepting it. You spend your time on going through it, and
then I can pay attention to my family. Then I can be with my daughters and really be present. Then I can work with my clients and have my mind available. All those things. So you need that outcome picture that you want, and you also have to have some trust in the self-help approach or the treatment approach that is presented to you. You got to have those two things, and if you can have those two things and then be determined and then be courageous, like you were mentioning, now we got a combination that is really a winning combination here.
And this is proven. Like you said, gold standards is cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure. Those are the two. You called those the two gold standards, and they have shown proof, I think, through MRIs, that you can actually see the changes in the brain by using the treatment of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's right.
So it's absolutely true, and in fact, it's just as good or better than medications, and medications have side effects that you really don't want, when you go through these medications. And so many are thrown out at people, doctors who don't know, like you do. And unfortunately, there's not enough people trained as knowledgeable as you are in this, in overcoming anxiety and worry, and that's an unfortunate part. And I'm hoping...
But that's part of what the book is about, is to try to get in the hands of people, let them be educated consumers so they don't get mistreated and so forth. And I would just say that about the medications, the least effective treatment is medication.
Yes.
A combination of medication and cognitive behavioral therapy works well. Cognitive behavioral therapy by itself works well, but medications alone is the least effective, but that's the most likely thing that people receive when they go to their primary care doc, or when they go to the emergency room, or they go to their cardiologist with heart pains, or they go to their pulmonologist around breathing. The quickest thing to do is write a prescription, and it's not clear who in their community might do cognitive behavioral therapy, and so off people go. The real sin here is those gatekeepers don't tell people that there's an alternative to a medication prescription. That's what we would really like to change in the field.
And I'll tell you, doctor, I know some psychiatrists who don't understand it as well as you do, and maybe because their expertise isn't in anxiety and worry, but it's just something they really don't understand. Some psychiatrists, because I've met a lot of people, and I'll talk to them about things, and I'll find out, wow, they know prescription. That's what they know. They're not in the field of sitting down and counseling like what you do, and you have this is a special gift to Chicago, because I know July 27th, July 28th. This year, 2016, you have a special OCD treatment group coming into Chicago. You're also going to be July 31st, August 1st, special OCD treatment in Chicago again group. Where can people find out more? Is that from your website?
They can go to anxieties.com and find out about it. They can go to the OCD Foundation, International OCD Foundation. So these two treatment groups are attached to the conference. It's actually the only treatment that is offered during the conference. So we take 8 people per group, and then I've got 4 professionals who observe what I'm doing and trying to learn some of the things that I'm offering. So that's an opportunity for them. And so is the entire conference. The conference is a tremendous 3 days of, we are 2/3 of the people that come to the OCD conference in Chicago will be lay people, will be families, children, adolescents, adults with OCD, and then the researchers, the top researchers in the world on OCD, and then clinicians. So there's talks all day long into the evenings, video films, and so forth. The conference itself is a wonderful place to learn, and it's not that expensive. You will get it's a warm, welcoming, great place to learn and to get stronger.
Yeah, when it comes to expense, what price can you put on your freedom? It's just that's ridiculous to think about. Money. I mean, your book, I know it has retail price of $16.95, and for $16.95, this is the best book I have ever read that deals with anxiety and worry, and it's stopping the noise in your head. The New Way to Overcome Anxiety and Worry by Dr. Reid Wilson is available wherever books are sold, or you can order it directly from the publisher at www.hcibooks.com. Doctor, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy man, helping others find their ways out of this anxiety, and that you're just doing your chosen field. I really appreciate you taking that field, because I know people who suffer with anxiety. I've had anxiety problems, and I still go through things, and it's wonderful to talk to somebody who understands it and can convey it correctly.
Well, thanks, Bill.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Doctor, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.